In this video, we're going to get deeper into running some effects processing on our bass line. And the first one we're going to cover is resonators. Resonators, I rarely, if ever, see people use, and I think perhaps it's because people don't really understand what they do and how to get the best sound out of them. So basically, what a resonator is a network of pitched delays, very, very short delays. So let me quickly demonstrate here with a simple delay. So when I run something through a simple delay, this is what it sounds like. Okay, so there's our regular delay. I'm going to link them. So we're just dealing with a mono delay, not a left and a right now. And I'm going to unsync it. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the feedback time, very, 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 very short. And I'm going to turn the feedback level up. So we're going to get lots of very short feedbacks. Okay, now dramatically changes the sound, makes it kind of like metallic, and it gives it a pitch. Watch what happens when I change the time up. Makes it lower pitched. Turn the time up again. Lower pitch. So what a resonator is a resonator is effectively a whole bunch of those simple delays. And instead of having you set a specific time in milliseconds, it's done the timings for you, and you can tune the pitch to a specific note. And that's very useful for creating pitched effects. So let's turn the resonators on here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this because there's modulation that's happening on the wet dry. And I'm just going to delete that. I'm going to give it 100% wet. We're going to deactivate this one. And I'm going to let you listen to it without and with. So check this out. It gives us this really cool sound, but it's not really like what happens with a flanger or a phaser or even a single delay, because what's happening here is I have a whole bunch of these resonators all together. One of them's running at D0. D is the key of our tune, so it's running at the root key. And I have one pitched up 7 semitones, another one pitched up 12 or a full octave, another one down by 5, and down by 5. And these two are slightly detuned from each other, up 3 and down 3 cents. So we also have a width control here and output gain and whatnot. Each one of these has been tweaked. So what's happening with our actual real resonators that we're using is I'm modulating the wet dry of them. So in some pieces of our bass line, it's not on, and in other cases, it's on. And this wet dry is mapped to a different macro. It's mapped to this one right here, the resonators macro. And I'm modulating that as well with clip automation, clip envelopes. So check this out. We've got here's our main macro 2 resonators. And you can see here, I'm using it in the second half of this clip. So if we just go here, we want to listen to it. Here's what it sounds like. Right after our resonators, we have an audio effect rack containing 3 chains, each with a different type of filter on it. So if we go to chain 1, we're using Ableton's autofilter. And each one of these filters is set up as a notch filter or a band reject filter. So it's going to just remove a very small section of sound right at the cutoff frequency of the filter. The reason why I'm using these notch filters instead of regular like high pass or low pass filters is because I don't want to be removing very much audio. I want to create this nice warbly modulated sound of these filters sweeping through it, but I don't want to remove so much audio that it takes away the meat and the punch of our bass patch. So if we turn this on, you'll see I have notch 1 is an auto filter. We're using the LFO right here, and the LFO is sweeping that filter back and forth unsynced, so 0.14 hertz. I have very similar settings for the notch 2. We're using an auto filter again, but the amount and the rate is different. So they're going to be sweeping through different pieces of our bass independently. Third filter is a Sugar Bytes WOW filter, and this is a special one because it has a vowel mode, and that's again a pretty core part of the sound. Is I have it set to band reject, which is effectively a notch filter, but instead of the auto filter, this one is using the vowel mode, which is switching between the U and the I vowels, and I have modulation on the vowel cutoff. So let's just listen to this without and then with. So it gives it this filtered, sweepy, talking kind of character to it. Now, where this is macroed to, by the way, the vowel cutoff is macroed to macro position 1 on the audio effect rack here, and in turn, this is macroed to the main macro 1 knob right here where all of our main clip envelopes are coming from. So that is a nice little network of filters that's giving us a really added modulated piece to this sound. So you'll see right here we have an end to our rack tab from the filters, and next in line is Ableton's AMP plugin. AMP is a optional paid add-on if you're a regular user of Live, or if you own Ableton Suite, then it comes with Suite. And for me, this is a absolutely invaluable plugin. So it adds a pretty heavy layer of distortion onto anything. So if you want to make anything sound nice and nasty, the AMP plugin is a fantastic way to do that. Let's listen to it without and with. So dramatic impact on the sound. Now basically what I've done with the AMP plugin is I've taken it in and I've just used the preset bass, and then I've tweaked the bass, middle, treble, presence knobs, volume, and dry wet to taste. So I've backed off the dry wet so it's not quite 100%. And I'm also using it in dual mode, so it's going to be a stereo plugin because we have a little bit different stuff happening in the left and the right here. So to finish off our patch, we've got a little bit of compression that we're adding in, the basic Ableton compressor, and we're squashing it down a little bit. We've got a 4:1 ratio, FF2 model, and very, very, very short attack and release. I like using compression after the filters because filters remove sound. They're subtractive. And whenever you're removing sound with EQs and filters and things like that, you're going to want to glue it back together. Otherwise, it sounds kind of thin. So the compressor here is effectively acting as fattening glue, which is helping our subtractive filters to glue the sound back together. Following the compressor, the last plugin in our entire chain here is a very short reverb. So we're using Ableton's stock reverb in high quality mode. We have the low cut and high cut filters engaged, so we're really just getting some reverb on the middles. We have a very low decay time, 334 milliseconds. I guess that's not super low, but it's pretty low. We have the size backed off, so it's size 35, so it's not a very big room. And then we have just a little touch of wet dry going on right here, and that's helping us to fill out the sound. So here it is without the reverb and with. So let's take a sec and glue everything back together again. Let's take the solo off. And actually, let's solo our sub bass and our mid bass patch together. So let's listen to those at the same time. Now there's one layer that we haven't forgotten about here, and that is the very top layer. And very simply, the top layer of the bass here is exactly the same as the main, except it has a MIDI pitch plugin in front of it that's pitching it all up by 7 semitones. And you'll notice that it has some automation on it here, and what I've done is I've disabled it in the first half of the tune. You can see it's off, and then as soon as this main drop happens, boom, it comes on, and you can hear it. Let's just listen to it on its own. Now, if you've been watching closely, you'll also see there's a little green dot here, which means there is macro automation that is happening on the volume of the top bass. So you can see this has been mapped to macro knob 1, which is our main one that's doing all the movement of all the different effects in the patch. And it is modulating the chain volume of our top bass, meaning when the knob is all the way down to the left, you're not going to be hearing it as much, and it comes on more aggressively the higher you turn that knob up. Again, just giving our bass some nice movement and bringing in that higher frequency range only at certain points in the phrase of the tune. So let's put it all together and listen to everything all stacked up. So the only part of this patch that I haven't touched on yet in depth is the modulation that's happening. All of the clip envelopes, and I'm modulating in this track actually a lot more than just those macro knobs. I'm also modulating things like pitch bend and vibrato on the synth. So in the next video, we're going to dig into the modulation and finish everything off for you.